Hello, hello, and welcome to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. I am your host, as always, Josh Carr, and with me today is yet another fantastic guest. It's the host of Galactic Yoyo. It's Molly Marsh. How are you?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm good. In our pre-podcast chat, I was just telling you that I've been working from home today, and it's been exhausting. I haven't really been working that hard, but it's been exhausting. It's been one of those days. So yeah, I'm all right. It's nearly the weekend. Not that weekends really mean much anymore, but we're nearly there.
No, we're nearly there. We're nearly there. Well, we're, of course, as always, here to talk about Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
And let's dive straight into it. Where did it all start? Where did Doctor Who start for you?
As in my love of Doctor Who.
Your love of Doctor Who. Where did that come from?
So I must have been. It was about a year. I mean, I always question my childhood self's perception of time because children are really bad at perceiving the passage of time properly. But I think it was about a year before New Who happened that my dad. So me and my dad had always been big Star Wars fans, and when I was a kid, that was our main thing. Me and my dad just loved Star Wars. I had a massive collection of Star Wars figures, and it was just what I was obsessed with. And then he decided he was going to introduce me to Doctor Who, and the only video cassette that he had in the house was the Five Doctors. So he showed me the Five Doctors, and he explained to me before he showed me the Five Doctors that it was an unusual story because it had 5 Doctors in it, and that wasn't the norm. And he gave me like a whole sort of prelude to the story before he put it on, saying like, "This is weird, but it's the only one I have, so we'll see if you like it." And I did like it. And we ended up watching, kind of buying. We used to go to the local market and like Forbidden Planet and stuff, and buy video cassettes of other stories. I specifically remember buying Planet of Giants in W.H. Smith, the first Doctor story. But I remember that because I'd been really anti watching black and white stories, and that was the first black and white story that I finally caved and let my dad kind of introduce me to. So yeah, and then New Who happened. I was super excited for that to happen, and I just fell in love with it. And I used to get Doctor Who Adventures every week. I used to get Doctor Who magazine every month. My bedroom was covered in those kind of mid-spread posters from Doctor Who Adventures. I just had them all over my walls. And then at university even, I mean, all Doctor Who fans love lists, right? And I had a list of Doctor Who stories with production codes and titles handwritten on my wall at university, which is the behavior of a maniac. And I don't know why I did it, but that speaks to the kind of Doctor Who fan I am, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's really cool because we had Rob Shearman on last week who said
friend of Galactic
he was
Yoyo.
Also I'm just drop that name there.
Yeah.
He mentioned that he first got into Doctor Who with lists as well.
That's right. So he had this conversation with me. So I remember Rob Shearman saying to me that he recites the list to himself in his head when he's at the dentist. And I was at the dentist last week, and I don't know if you've ever been to the dental hygienist where they clean your teeth quite vigorously, but it's horrible. I was sitting in the chair, and I sort of heard Rob Shearman's voice echoing around my brain, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do the listing the Doctor Who stories thing. And I did, and it helped.
Yeah. Well, I do it all the time when I'm stressing out, but I do it with companions' names. I go through every companion from Susan to Dan now.
Right.
I just run through them in my head when I'm worrying.
That's a minefield though, because do you include Mike Yates? Do you include River Song? You sort of blanket include everyone.
I try and include as many people as possible.
Right. Does Handles get a mention?
Handles doesn't get a mention, but I'm going to include Handles from now on.
Yeah, I mean, in universe, the longest standing Doctor Who companion.
Very true. Very, very true. That was with tangents. But
yeah, and I also
the five.
spotted myself starting asking you questions there, so
Yeah.
that means already started doing that. Anyway.
Well, this is what happens when you get two podcast hosts in the same vicinity. So the Five Doctors is a great starting point. Which is it's quite strange for someone who for someone who got into Doctor Who around 2004 2005. You'd imagine it would have been New Who.
Yeah,
but the Five Doctors is a great one. Because I only watched it for the first time last year when I did my full rewatch. Not rewatch, my first full watch through of Classic Who. It's fun, isn't it? It's really fun.
It's ridiculous, but it is fun.
It's so daft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it would. It's kind of. I remember as a kid thinking about like what the 10 Doctors would look like, for example, when David Tennant was the Doctor, and sort of imagining a 5 Doctors equivalent. And of course, it would never look like that. Like there would never. I knew there would never be a multi-Doctor story like that again. But it sort of became this. I don't know. It became this touchstone for me in my head. This cultural touchstone of like that's what multi-Doctor stories and that's what anniversary specials look like. I don't know. It's a good story though.
Yeah.
It's not. It's one to put on for fun, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not. You don't go to it for high art, really.
No.
It's definitely. I love the team ups though. I know a lot of people. I saw someone on Twitter the other day criticizing the team ups.
Well, they're kind of accidental team ups because of casting problems and stuff, aren't they? But I kind of like that about it. It gives it a sort of it makes it feel fresh and unexpected. I don't much like the first Doctor and Susan team up actually. I think again it's a bit of fun and I don't want to be the kind of person who gets stressed about this sort of thing. But I don't like the version of events where Susan met all the Doctors in her 40s and did not and like was completely nonchalant about it. Like that doesn't compute for me.
And all of the Doctors are just like, oh, you're here.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's nothing. So I'm never sure about that.
I think
I just try not to think about it.
Pat and the Brig is
really
the
works.
best.
Yeah, that really works.
I think I'd watch hours and hours on end of Pat and the Brig. Happy birthday to Patrick Troughton, by the way.
It's his birthday today
as we are recording it. So yeah. Obviously it must have been because we've had a few people on here who were kids whose like dads got them into Classic Who and then New Who came in. That must have been like it was exciting for me when I had never even heard of Doctor Who in my life. So God knows what it must have been like in terms of excitement for someone who knew about the show.
Yeah, I mean, it was equivalent to. I mean, I said I was a massive Star Wars fan, and it was the equivalent to when you knew a new Star Wars film was coming. You know, knowing new Doctor Who was coming was like, unbelievable because it was more of because I was introduced to Doctor Who by my dad, who said to me as he introduced it to me, oh, by the way, this was cancelled in 1989 and they're not making any more of it. But it's like, so it was he introduced it to me as a dead thing. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that it was then going to become an alive thing was, amazing and strange and seemed impossible. But was happening. And I remember my dad giving me warnings saying, look, this might be shit. I mean, he wouldn't have used the word shit because I'm 25 and he still doesn't swear in front of me. But he said to me, this might not be very good, because he did not think highly of the Paul McGann film, and neither did the general public, really, which is why the Paul McGann film didn't lead to anything. But he was kind of warning me that it might be that again, and it might be one season, and it might go nowhere. And obviously that isn't the case, and it's 15 years on, and we're still watching Doctor Who. But but yeah, I had this. It was all. It was there was a lot of excitement, and it was it was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose it all leads to now,
It does, yeah.
and it leads us to you being the host of a Doctor Who podcast. So where did Galactic Yoyo come from? When did Galactic Yoyo start? Because I'm quite new to the podcast. I'm
Right.
going back through old episodes.
Sure.
But
So
where did Galactic Yoyo start?
Galactic Yo-Yo had a chaotic genesis. So this is we have to go back to the heady days of 2017 when I'd been out of university for a year, but I had stayed. I mean, I'm gonna provide a very detailed account here.
Please do.
And
Please do.
I hope you enjoy. So I'd finished my 3-year degree course in Leeds, and I had decided that I was going to stay in Leeds for a further year at least, because all of the people that I live with and my partner and a bunch of my friends were doing 4-year degree courses, and I thought, well, I'll just stick around and I'll get a job and I'll just live with the flatmates that I've been living with, and I'll basically carry on being a student, but I'll have a job instead. And that's what I did. And it didn't really quite work out like that, because I ended up getting a job as a primary school teaching assistant, and it turns out when you're a teaching assistant, you can't really keep the same hours as party animal students. But anyway, that was kind of what 2017 looked like for me. And I'd ended up with more disposable income than I'd had at university. So, and I ended up with a kind of spare time in the school holidays and stuff. So I'd started up a Twitter account called Who Merch, where I detailed the kind of all different kinds of Doctor Who merchandise, from action figures to clothing, and I would look up information about it online, then I would post about it, much in the same way that Who FX used to do about the Doctor Who special effects. And I ended up garnering quite a following on there. But then I would get people asking me questions about the Doctor Who merchandise, as if I was some kind of Doctor Who collectibles authority, which I wasn't. I had a very small collection of Doctor Who memorabilia. So I thought, well, I better start building my collection. And I had this new disposable income, so I started bidding for things on eBay, and then I ended up with this bedroom in this student let that looked like one of those bedrooms you see on the news, where it's like an inflatable Dalek and action figures on all the shelves. And I went a bit crazy, and I had like cardboard boxes just full of Doctor Who magazines and stuff. And then really I realized that I gathered about 1,000 followers on the Who Merch account, which isn't loads, but it was more than I'd ever had for anything else. And I thought, well, okay, I'm enjoying the following, but actually I'm not getting much from posting these images of Doctor Who action figures and stuff. I want to be more creative. I want to do something creative with my love of Doctor Who. And that's what gave me the idea to make the podcast. And I'm a musician, so I already had the recording gear in order to facilitate recording the podcast. So I thought, well, that's going to be nice and easy for me to do. So I kind of sent a few feelers out. I approached a few guests, and then I recorded the first episode at a really inopportune time when I was moving out of the flat. And my parents had already moved a load of stuff out for me. So I only had like my computer and like a suitcase full of clothes and like a few bits and bobs just around the room. And then me in the middle, at the computer recording the podcast on the evening that I was going to move out. And then I edited the podcast that night. And then I moved out of my flat at 1:00 in the morning in a taxi. And then the next day I moved all my stuff from one friend's house to another friend's house in a suitcase in several trips on the hottest day of the year, just walking back and forth with a suitcase, emptying it, refilling it, emptying it, refilling it. Bizarre episode in my life.
Wow.
And and I don't know why I decided this was the best time to start a podcast. Because I was then like crashing on friends' sofas for like a month, and had committed to making weekly podcast episodes. So I was having to like scrounge people's internet and like take my iMac computer like up the road in a cab to record podcasts at people's houses, and it was mental. But I'm so glad. I'm so bad at like backing out when I've committed to stuff. So I'd committed to making these podcasts, and that was like my goal, and I was fixed on it. And I'm so glad that I didn't give up at that early stage, because obviously it grew into something bigger. And I ended up making loads of friends through it, and I've really enjoyed making it. And now I'm in the 4th year of the podcast's existence. I've made 124 episodes, and it always frightens me, by the way, when people talk about what you just said about going back and listening to the early ones, because it's come a long way since then. And my worst nightmare is people thinking, oh, I'll start at the beginning of Galactic Yoyo. In fact, I keep meaning to get round to recording an intro and putting it on the top of episode 1 to say, look, this is not what you want to hear. Skip ahead to like at
I don't
least
think
episode
that's the
25.
case.
But
I
don't know.
doubt that's the case. But well, yeah, I mean, like you said, 4 years, 124 episodes. I mean, it's incredible. What an achievement. Like, I mean,
it's a hefty oeuvre, that's for sure.
Yeah, as someone who's, I mean, I'd like to think that I'm getting into the swing of this Who podcasting malarkey now.
Which episode is this going to be? 14?
This is
14?
14. Yeah.
Mm.
We've had a couple of we had a half episode, and we've now got the new spin-off podcast, which is launched the night that we're recording this. So if you want to go and listen to that, go ahead. It's chaotic. But yeah, about 15, 16 altogether episodes.
Sure.
Which is
it's
still
not to be sniffed
early
at.
days. Yeah, it's not. No, I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the podcast. But yeah, that like 100 episode goal is so far away for me. Like,
but also your approach has been very different from mine. I mean, I noticed from the moment that you appeared on Twitter and stuff. Am I right in thinking you're kind of a graphic designer, or at least that's your hobby?
It's a hobby that I'm not very good at.
But you've got the kind of materials there, the logo. I mean, you had the logo before the podcast even was recorded.
Exactly.
You have you announce your guests in advance. You've got a system for it. Whereas I've just explained how chaotic my podcast launch was. I didn't have a logo for the first maybe 7 or 8 episodes because I was just waiting for a logo. The artist that I work with to get back to me. The theme tune that I used for the first like 120 episodes, I just borrowed from. I'd written a play, and I'd commissioned my friend to write a soundtrack for the play, and I just borrowed one of the tracks he'd written for that to be my theme tune. So it was all very like hodgepodge, and I still kind of have a hodgepodge approach to podcasting because I know that I know that it's not really in me to commit to anything other than a hodgepodge approach. So I kind of that's what I go for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the social media side of things, I am.
You clearly excel at that.
I just try and. I thought if I'm doing this, I might as well do it. You know, like I might as well push it as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And it was more just a byproduct of everything getting planned beforehand was sort of just more of a byproduct of procrastination.
Sure.
As I mentioned to you before, like I've got this Who Knew mug here, which has the logo on, which was gifted to me by my girlfriend. I've been putting off doing the podcast for ages, and then I came home one day and Jess had bought me a microphone and a mug with the logo on and gone, like, now you've got to do it. There's no backing out now. So yeah, it was just a case that I'd put it off so long that I ended up planning everything that could possibly be planned and then sort of going, well, now I've got to do it.
Yeah, whereas for me it was about my impatience, and often for me with creative stuff, if I don't just do it, then I just won't do it. Do you know what I mean? That I can think of loads of examples of stuff that I've started and never finished because I've tried to be too meticulous about it. And I think that's just my personality. I kind of do things and I put them out there. But yeah, it's different approaches.
Yeah. Well, because our podcasts are in the Doctor Who podcasting world,
Mm.
I'd say we're pretty similar in a
Yeah,
world
for
where
sure.
there's a lot of review podcasts, but we have both gone sort of more down the interview route. Was that like a conscious decision on your part? What was like in terms of how you formed the podcast and deciding to like have guests on rather than have like a couple of people do it and you review episodes or something completely different like that? Where
Yeah.
did that come from?
It's funny, this is a kind of a conversation I had with a guy called Johnny Spandrel, who I sometimes talk to on my podcast. Um, I, I mean, firstly, I couldn't have done a multi-host review podcast because I didn't really know anyone who would have been up for doing that with me. So it's kind of always a case of it was always going to be a solo venture for me, and also kind of the word interview interests me because I feel like as the podcast has gone on, the conversations have become interviews more consciously. Whereas in its early days, they were more focused on, it was more of a chat about Doctor Who with whoever the guest happened to be that week. Whereas I feel like I've as the podcast has gone on, I've become more confident as a host. I've honed my hosting skills more, and I see myself as an interviewer more um, than I ever did at the start. Especially if it's a more high profile guest. I don't know whether your approach, because I know you've had a mix of people like me and then also people like Rob Shearman and Douglas McKinnon and stuff. I don't know whether your approach. I shouldn't be asking you this. Don't answer this question because I can ask you this on Galactic Yoyo. But your approach might change maybe between those two kinds of guests. And I know mine does. If I'm interviewing a creator at my level, it does tend to be more of a chat. Whereas um, if I'm interviewing somebody like Rob Shearman or Peter Harness or Andrew Cartmel, it's more of a traditional me asking them questions and them answering.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is exactly what was in my head. I always
Although
have in my head that there's like I have two types of podcasts that I do. I have these podcasts and then I have the more interviewy ones.
yeah,
I
although
like to mix it up a bit.
as time's gone on actually, and especially in the last sort of 15, 20 podcasts I've done, I've felt the two podcast types bleed into each other a little bit more. I mean, I've sort of started thinking, well, why are these smaller creators not deserving of that more high quality interview treatment? And I'm thinking about Verity Ritchie, who I interviewed on the most recent podcast I put out, or George Sheard, who I know we both interviewed. Both of those people, those podcast conversations began with sort of 20-minute interviews about their creative process in terms of making their YouTube videos, and then the Doctor Who chat sort of starts half an hour, 40 minutes in. And I kind of find that, I don't know, I've enjoyed doing that and getting an insight into what makes people tick as well as what makes them what interests them as a Doctor Who fan, even if they are relatively unknown by comparison to some of my more high profile guests, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you have had some very high profile guests. I mean,
here and there,
just a few. Yeah, of one that I was listening to the other day that I really enjoyed. Was the episode with Rufus Hound.
Yeah. I would say he's probably been my most high profile guest. I would say.
Yeah,
probably.
I'd say that it was such an interesting chat. Because I mean, I just loved how honest he was. Like it must have been great. Like when I don't know if you get this as well, but like when I was recording like with Rob Shearman, and you just when you know it's a good one, like when even though I back all my episodes as being decent because of my guests.
Yeah.
Like I just got this feeling, and I was like, yeah, this is top. That like this is like just because of how honest and open they were.
Yeah, I can't remember how I felt during the Rufus Hound one. I know what you mean. Sometimes that feeling hits me when I'm recording one and I think, oh, this conversation's going really well and it's going to sound really good. And sometimes I'm not sure while I'm recording it, and then it takes going back and listening again with a bit of distance for me to go, oh no, that actually was interesting and good. And sometimes I think it's going really badly, and then I'll listen again, and it's been better than I thought. But yeah, I think my prevailing thought during the Rufus Hound one was I couldn't believe he'd agreed to it, and I didn't want to be wasting his time. So I was very kind of anxious about asking the right questions and saying the right things in that particular chat. So I probably wasn't thinking too much about how well it was going while it was happening. I just wanted, and also he's an easy person because he's gonna keep talking. He's not the hardest guests, and I obviously, like you, I love all my guests equally. The hardest ones are those guests who aren't necessarily used to public speaking, aren't necessarily used to putting themselves out there, and as an interviewer and as a host, I am required to do more work to kind of get their insights out of them. Whereas people like Rufus Hound, I could sit and say nothing, and Rufus Hound would be entertaining. So it's kind of I guess that alleviates some of the pressure a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you go about? This is just so interesting for me because it's just finding someone who gets my struggles, someone who has had all of the same problems that I've had, probably about 10 times over. How do you go about like picking your guests? How does your networking work, like in terms of getting guests on?
Yeah. So
have you got any horror? There's a famous horror story that I've got, which I'm insistent. It's not even a horror story. It's just that someone that I approached just immediately blocked me from direct messaging them.
God, okay. No, I've never had anything like that.
Yeah, and it's the only
Sorry.
time I've ever
I
had
realise that's not very
like
reassuring.
No, it's fine. It's the only time I've ever had anything like that, and everyone is so eager to guess who it is. I will never reveal it. I apologise, because I'd still
when we
love
stop
to have
recording,
that person on the podcast.
you can tell me after the.
I'll tell you off there. I can tell you off there. But yeah, like, has it always? It shocked me how easy.
Yeah,
it was.
I've said this from the start. It's from the very beginning. It shocked me how up for it people are, and my theory is that people love talking about themselves, especially creative people. So it's not. It's getting somebody like Nicholas Briggs. No offense, Nicholas, to agree to talking about himself for an hour is never going to be that difficult. So I kind of, I learned that quite quickly. I don't know. One thing that is difficult though is that as the podcast has gone on, as I said earlier, I've made a lot of friends through it. So a lot of the people who feature in the first sort of 10, 15 Galactic Yoyo episodes are now like close friends of mine. And I moved down to London a couple of months after starting the podcast, and now I see a lot of those people all the time. And some of them, like Crystal D, who I know you've spoken to, and my friend Luke Spallan, who I spoke to on like maybe the second or third ever Galactic Yoyo, and even like Ben Cook, who I'm not like super close with, but I've seen I've met with socially a few times, and we do kind of know each other more than just as through podcasts now. But what can be difficult is when you know people like that who God, I'm trying to say all this without sounding like I'm like being name droppy. When you know people who know people, it can be. I'm very conscious that I never want those people to think that I'm exploiting my friendship with them to procure, podcast guests or to meet people or to, I don't know, even to get insight on the show or whatever. So I think I spent a lot of time making Galactic Yoyo with a lot of contacts, not exploiting them at all, like not using them, not networking, because
Yeah.
I felt dirty networking. But I've got a bit better at that, and I am in a place now where I can just I do feel able to just approach people, and also the more people I've had out on the podcast, the more people I can add to my list when I approach people and say, look, I've spoken to this person, this person, this person, and it kind of adds to your. I mean, you'll have experienced the same thing. It kind of adds to your credentials where you can be like, I am reputable. This is a podcast worth going on.
No, I totally relate to that, because like when you said about obviously close friends from like your first few episodes, I don't know, I feel from everyone in that first series, not that obviously I don't get it with the second series, obviously I'm quite fresh into the second series of the podcast, but that first series is just, I've just got especially the first 5 episodes, I think I've just got a bond with those people now, and it's like, you really, really helped me out, like in launching this thing.
I mean, I especially feel that, and I've said this a lot on Galactic Yoyo, but I especially feel that about Luke Spillane, who I spoke to on the second podcast. That I think he was still doing the fan show, the Doctor Who the fan show at the time, and I didn't know him, and I reached out to him, and he was up for it, and there's another couple of people in that first, in that first 10 or so episodes, Beth Axford of Time Ladies fame, for example, they just said yeah, and that really helped me. Even though they didn't really have a reason to say yeah, my podcast hadn't gone anywhere yet, and that really helped me out. Long term.
Well, it's like, and now I've launched this spin-off podcast with all of these friends that I made at the start. Like, obviously, I've got Tom Vance and Billy, Garrett John, and because just the people in this community are just so great. And I get what you mean, like obviously about not wanting to feel like you're using people, I suppose, is like to get to other people that they know. It's sort of something that I've decided in my head, where it's like, I don't want to be, I never want, I always want when I approach someone for the podcast, I always want it to be direct. I don't want to have to go to someone that I know and go, can you ask this person? I always go, so even though there's people that I know people like Billy, for example, like Billy knows so many people, but I'm really good mates with Billy now. He's a great lad, and I don't want to put him in a position where he's then scouting for me.
This is it. It's about the other person. You don't want to put those other people in a position where they're having to pester somebody else. Like, that's not something I want to do to other people. But you know, I do manage to maintain a steady intake of guests. It's weird because it goes in waves. Like, I'll be thinking, I've the supply of Doctor Who fans to interview on Galactic Yoyo has completely dried up. Like, I'm looking, I scroll through Twitter and I'm like, there's nobody left. I've done everybody, and then all of a sudden I'll find 6 or 7 people and reach out to them all at once. Like, it's remarkable that there are still guests I haven't interviewed, but there are.
Well, this is the thing. There's so many people. In one night, right? This is another thing that I did before I started the podcast. That was procrastination. I was like, I wanted it to be a celebration of the people in this community, like putting them in the spotlight. And I was like, are there enough people in this community to put in the spotlight to make an episode? So I wrote up a list of potential guests, sorted into like realistic, which were like people that I already knew that I wanted to get on, people who were like semi-realistic, who were like, I could probably reach out to them. And then I had a dream guest list.
Right, so that's really interesting, because that's not something I've ever done consciously. I mean, in my brain, I guess I've sort of abstractly done that. But I don't know whether you spoke to Crystal D about this, but her podcast, from Care to Where that she does about
Mhm.
foster care and young people growing up in care. When she was first launching that, she and I had a conversation about it, and she said that she did exactly that and wrote down like 3 tiers of guests to reach out to, of
Yeah.
people she knew were at her level that she could realistically go to, and they would definitely say yes. Then, as you say, semi-realistic, and then these dream people. And what you want is you want to be able to release a set of podcasts with people from all those groups in, right? You want
Mhm.
a couple of your dream guests to one day say yes, and then you can.
Yeah, and that was like we said, like how it surprised me how easy it was, because I wrote up a list. I mean, this will excite fans of Who Knew, because obviously we're only on episode 14. Obviously not. I haven't asked all of these people, and a few people have said no. Very respectfully, they've all been lovely about it. But the list has 250 names on
Oh
it.
my word! Right. Wow.
So
Okay.
there's a lot of potential episodes. And I gave up that night. I just that well I that doesn't even include, so there isn't one doctor on that list.
Mm.
Like, I haven't even got any of the doctors on that list, or most of the companions. But yeah, it's just like, and even the people who are those dream guests that you approach, they're always just so
Yeah,
lovely.
I've never had anyone be anything less than lovely in their response to me. Um, I think it's interesting thinking about having those really high profile guests on, because I don't know, this is another thing I suppose you might have been getting to asking me about, but the premise of Galactic Yo-Yo is guests share their unpopular Doctor Who opinions, and that premise has kind of diminished uh in importance as the podcast has gone on. Like the newer
Mhm.
episodes, it's like it's still a massive component of it, but I'm not as hung up on that conceit anymore. Um, and I do think about some of those really high profile guests, and I think, well, when you interview those kind of people, the podcast just isn't going to be the same thing. And I've already experienced that with people like Nicholas Briggs. Although actually, Nicholas Briggs did do his unpopular opinions, but people like Andrew Cartmel, for example, people like Rufus Hound, people who aren't really Doctor Who fans in the same way that like you and I are,
Yeah,
you can't really do the same podcast with them, because they're not going to have an unpopular Doctor Who opinion. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I spoke to
yeah,
Peter Davison. He doesn't give a shit. Like, so it becomes
yeah,
an entirely different beast. And I actually I wouldn't want. I mean, um, I might be kind of jinxing it here, but I wouldn't want to every week be speaking to David Tennant, Billy Piper, you know, Freema Agyeman. Just that's not what the Galactic Yo-Yo is, and it's not what it's about. I
yeah,
like the
I'm exactly the
situation I've
same.
got at the moment that is a sort of nice balance. I mean, I realise how I'm sounding, because I doubt David Tennant and Billy Piper would want to speak to me either. But do you know what I mean, though? I'm kind of aiming for. It's
Yeah,
nice. It's I don't know. It's nice to get a balance.
yeah. Well, no,
If I sound
I
like a
get that as
dickhead
well.
there, please
No, not at
please
all, not
cut
at
that whole
all.
passage out.
I don't
I'm
want to cut it, because I feel exactly the same. It's like, because like I had Douglas McKinnon on a few weeks ago, and he
not a Doctor Who fan as far as I'm aware.
he
I haven't
is
actually listened
actually.
to the episode, but pardon me.
Yeah, he I wasn't sure going into
Right.
it. I was like, obviously I know that we're going to have a lot to talk about,
Mhm.
because he's worked on it across 3 eras of Doctor Who. Like, the work he's done is insane.
Mhm.
Um, but I asked him, and he was actually a Doctor Who fan since he
Right.
was a kid, and he loved the show. But you know, asking him to do something like the Corridor of Fame,
Mm.
it's the Corridor of Fame especially is awkward. Obviously, I did ask him. I ask all of the guests. I say, you know, do you want to? And he respectfully declined, very understandably, because he probably knows a lot of these people, and it's like asking him to pick a favorite friend,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather
Yeah.
than
Or a
us
colleague.
talking about
Yeah.
these. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, and I'm
fit
exactly
into
the same.
answers.
It sounds
So I
very
get
similar.
that.
I'm exactly the same with my unpopular opinion thing. I pick and choose when I'm going to share that with potential guests that I'm approaching. But yeah, if I'm approaching a particularly high profile guest, um I will phrase it as I'm going to ask them about their life and career and their experience working on Doctor Who,
Yeah,
and then if later on I get a rapport with them, then I will slip in the thing about unpopular
yeah,
opinions if I think it's appropriate. But yeah, it's a delicate balancing act, for sure.
it is. It
But
definitely
but
is.
I enjoy.
And
This is why I enjoy making the podcast, because it's speaking. I'm not sure I'd enjoy podcasting as much if it was me and two friends every week. Like I want part of the fun is getting to speak to a new person every episode.
mhm,
That is part of the joy for me.
yeah, no, completely agree. And while we're on the topic of features,
Yeah,
oh, see that
let's do
link?
some features.
Let's do some features. We'll take a very quick break,
Okay.
and when we come back, we're gonna do the DVD collection.
Are you going to put your ads in here? Is this where your Squarespace or your mattress ad is going to go?
No,
Okay.
no ads yet.
So we're going to get some jazz now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We've just had some jazz.
Right. Oh, the jazz is done. This is
The
post
jazz is. We can do post jazz if you want.
Right. Fine. That's fine. Cool. Great. Should we get doing features then?
Yeah, let's do
Great.
the features. And our first feature, as everybody knows, is that dusty old shelf that's full of DVDs now. And why not? Let's add another. It's the DVD collection.
By the power of Grayskull.
The Unicorn and the Wasp, or Love and Monsters.
Which one do you think I'll prefer?
No, I mean, which one do you want to watch first?
You are pulling my leg.
The DVD collection. Great. Would you like me to
Yes.
reveal my pick now, or have you?
I
got
would
some
love
scribble
you
first?
to reveal your pick now.
So my pick is not my favorite Doctor Who story, because you pitched this to me as it's a Doctor Who story of significance. It didn't have to necessarily be your favorite. I find it very difficult to pick a favorite.
Yes.
I'm not sure I know what my favorite is. It might be The Empty Child. It might be The Pandorica Opens. And it could be this next one that I'm going to name, but I don't think it is that. But my pick for the DVD collection is Love and Monsters.
Yes.
It's not. I'm right in thinking it's not
Yes.
been picked before, right?
Oh God, no.
No,
of
it
course
hasn't.
it
Right.
hasn't.
Don't say of course it hasn't. Don't be doing that to Love and Monsters.
But I'm just saying, it's not what you'd think
Right,
would
so
be picked.
The reason I'm
But
picking Love and
I've
Monsters.
been waiting for this day. I've been waiting for this day for months. I've said it before, like it's in my head. The DVD collection exists within my head.
Mhm.
It's not a physical collection. It's my brain. So these episodes like constantly get stored in my brain now as a list.
So Love and Monsters is there now.
And I love the fact that Love and Monsters is there. Go tell me exactly why.
Right, so
Go
the reasons
ahead.
are twofold. Firstly, I mean, it probably is in my top 5 Doctor Who stories ever. I mean, as a child, I used to think it was ridiculous, and I used to get cross at it for shitting on Doctor Who. That's not how I feel about it anymore. I think it's like a wonderful human story about community and friendship, and being like, it's a story about Doctor Who fans, like, which is so amazing. I love the use of my favorite song, Mr. Blue Sky. I love Mark Warren as Elton. I think he's like perfect casting. Although I'd love to see the alternate version where Peter Kay plays Elton, which was the original plan. That would be amazing.
Really?
Yeah, so they approached Peter Kay to play Elton, and he said no because he'd recently done a guest spot on Coronation Street playing a sort of similar sci-fi nerd character. So
Yeah.
he said, but he read the script and he said, what about the Absorbaloff? and Russell was like, sure. But I do think he'd make a good Elton. But the reason I like Mark Warren as Elton is because he's in no way a caricature of a nerd, but he's also like not too far in the other direction either. Like he's like a sort of idiosyncratic weird guy, but he's also kind of an everyman, which I really like about him.
Yeah.
I love the framing device that it's like told through vlogs. I just absolutely love and Monsters. I love the romance subplot. I don't even object too much to the paving stone thing because to me it's like it's a heightened reality. It's not like to me it's like it's not really happening in the narrative. Like
I get you.
To me, Elton is an unreliable narrator, and we are having the story relate to us through him. So I don't really trust him about getting blowjobs from a paving slab anyway. But that's the first reason that I'm picking it. The second is that obviously my podcast is about unpopular opinions, and it often involves people advocating for unloved stories. The first ever Galactic Yoyo episode, Richard B. Brooks of YouTube channel 5 Who Fans fame, came to me with the opinion that he loved Love and Monsters. And then in almost every subsequent podcast, I've had guests come to. I say almost every. It's not almost every, but I could probably name you 8 to 10 occasions since when people have wanted to talk about Love and Monsters. So it's not as unpopular as you might believe, and it's become a kind of tentpole of Galactic Yoyo, in that like it's the story that everyone assumes is hated, but is actually loved, and I love that.
I agree. I think it's got this cult status now.
It has got cult status. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got this cult status now where so my stance on it, because I've mentioned on the podcast before that me looking objectively at Doctor Who is not something I can do because I adore all of Doctor Who, and sometimes the worse the better. Like sometimes there's nothing worse to me than just a boring, bland Doctor Who episode.
Yeah,
it's either got to be
100%.
incredible or so dreadful that it's so enjoyable.
I watched The Curse of the Black Spot today. Don't ask me why. And it's one of the blandest Doctor Who stories ever. And I hate that so much more than a story like, I don't know, In the Forest of the Night, which I have major problems with and like I never find properly satisfying, but is completely off the wall and is really going for it and doing something different. And that's my stance too.
Well, it's like Lost on Gallifrey. A few weeks ago, we're doing the Black Guardian trilogy, and they covered Terminus, which for me, we had this debate about like number rankings, like ranking things like from 1 to 10, like giving something a score out of 10, and I argued that a 1 out of 10 episode is better than a 5 out of 10 episode.
I think I agree with you. Yeah.
I think Terminus is a 5 out of 10 episode.
Yeah, I agree.
In the worst way possible.
Yeah, it's
right?
mediocre.
Because it's so mediocre, and I would never pick to watch a 5 out of 10 episode.
Curse of the Black Spot, exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But actually, I can see where this is going, and Love and Monsters is not a 1 out of 10. Like, Love and Monsters
I don't think it's a 1 out of 10.
Is genuinely and earnestly good.
I think it's an anomaly of these episodes where it's simultaneously a 2 and a 9 out of 10 at the same time.
I accept that reading.
Yeah, I absolutely adore it, and I will always just stick it on for a laugh. Like it's just one of those episodes that I always revisit. It's like,
oh yeah, I would never ever refuse the opportunity to watch Love and Monsters ever.
Yeah, it's an amazing episode, and also seeing a monster designed by a fan is really cool.
Will Grantham. Is he on your list? Because he's on mine.
He's on my list.
Yeah.
I want to get him on because
Right, I'll race you.
I want to discuss with him now about having a monster on the DVD shelf.
Right, yeah, of course. Yeah,
his monster is now part of the DVD collection. So many people are going to be so happy, but I'm just as soon as you said it, I'm just thinking of people that I know. Like Tom Vance will be listening to this, I imagine, and Tom Vance will be ecstatic about this because he loves Linda so much.
It deserves to be there.
What do you think about Linda? I love Linda.
I love it. So the secondary school I went to, I don't know whether I should reveal this on a podcast for the world, was called St. Thomas More. I know there's loads of secondary schools in the world called that, but that was the name of the school. And in year 7, I tried to establish a organization called SMINDA, which stood for St. Thomas More Investigation and Detective Agency. So yeah, I love Linda, and that's when I hated Love and Monsters. So it must have made an impression on me, even though I didn't like it.
That's incredible. So you hated it, and what was the point where it turned from from hate to love and monsters?
I think it was in my late teens when I began to grow my self-awareness that I sort of decided that it was okay to love and monsters. When I stopped being so self-serious about everything.
Yeah. Oh, I really want to watch Love and Monsters now.
Yeah, me too.
That's that. Oh, what a pick! That's a great pick.
I'm glad you're happy with it.
I applaud that.
I didn't even have to hesitate either. The other thing, the Corridor of Fame thing, I've and ahed about all day, whereas the DVD collection thing, I knew immediately what I was choosing.
Yeah. I'm so glad it's there. I'm so glad. So everybody, Love and Monsters is in the DVD collection.
It's going to get its own graphic and everything, isn't it, on your Instagram?
It's going to get its own graphic.
Amazing.
You bet it is.
That's so fun.
And no doubt we will discuss this on the spin-off podcast, the collector's edition. We will be discussing the DVD collection choices in detail. And we'll be getting Tom Vance and Billy Garrett John and the guest host of that week. We'll be getting their opinions on it. Wow, what a pick! I'm shook. I'm shook. We've now got a little matter to attend to.
Yes,
which is that horrid website, and we're gonna go and have a look on bloody Twitter.
For God's sake! Bloody Twitter!
We'll try and speed, but there's a few that we could speed run.
Let's do those first.
So let's do them. So, dear friend of the show, Jamie_season7, he's asked, who is your favourite writer for the show?
For Doctor Who as a whole?
Yeah,
Stephen Moffat, no question.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah.
How come?
I don't know. I think he's Russell's amazing, right? But I think Stephen, I get a joy from watching Stephen's work that I don't get from watching the work of any other writer. I love how it works mechanically. Yeah. I love his sense of humor. I love that, even every other line has a joke in it, even in a script which is not strictly a comedy. I love it, and I love how allegorical and sort of didactic his scripts are, without ever kind of hitting you on the nose with anything, you know?
Yeah, lovely answer. Another fond friend of the podcast, Cal at generic_tweeting. He's asked, what is your fondest memory of Doctor Who?
Gosh, my fondest memory of Doctor Who. This is, I'm trying to think of things that are more sentimental in relation to Doctor Who. Gosh, I'm gonna give you two answers to that.
That's fine.
Meeting Tom Baker at a convention was great, and getting my photograph taken with him. It's quite a boring answer though. Another one is God. I have so many more Doctor Who memories than this, but I cannot think of them all. Another one is when my partner made me a set of dungarees, like the ones Sarah Jane wears in The Hand of Fear, and I opened them on my birthday, and she showed me a video the other day of me opening them on my birthday, and I'm screaming. Like, you know, people say they're screaming and they're not
Yeah.
screaming. I was screaming. So that is probably my fondest Doctor Who memory, and it's funny because she's not a Doctor Who fan in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, that's really cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, we have such similar experiences.
Well, yeah, I guess you with the
'cause-
mug, right?
Yeah, well, my girlfriend. It was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I've even still got a Doctor Who banner up because I'm too lazy to take it down. But she did. I posted it on Twitter a few weeks ago. So scroll back through my Twitter if you want to see it. But she just decked out our whole spare room.
I think I did see this. Yeah.
Yeah, as a Doctor Who room, and she's not a Doctor Who fan.
That's incredible.
She was incredible. She is my favourite person on this earth.
She
We'll be
nailed
hearing
it.
from Jess a little bit later on.
Oh, wow,
As a
okay.
little tease. But yeah, and my other pick probably would have been meeting Tom Baker at a convention as well. So, because nothing compares to meeting Tom.
Oh,
He's-
actually, another moment. One more
Go
is
on.
watching The Day of the Doctor at the cinema, and the crowd cheering when Tom Baker said, "You know, I really do think you might."
Yes.
That was another big one for me.
Yeah, the two craziest moments I've had in the cinema are that moment, and the only moment that matched it was Cap picking up Mjolnir in Endgame.
In Avengers Endgame.
Those,
Okay.
yeah, those two moments. Well, I've never seen an audience react like that. I've never seen people gasp, but then there's like an actual gasp. There's like people sort of like recoiled in their seats. Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Wow.
that I made some weird noises both of those nights. Next question. We've mentioned it a couple of times. We've got 4 questions from the wonderful Tom Vance.
Okay.
He said, "Oh yes, hey Molly."
Hello, Tom.
His first question is, I'm going to save this one for later because I love this one.
Okay.
First one, favourite TARDIS exterior?
I find that as I get older, I care less about that than I used to, but I do like the classic First Doctor one, like especially as they brought it back in Twice Upon a Time. I think that's great.
Yes, agreed. Oh, Jodie's. I love Jodie's as well.
Jodie's is like the best of the New Who ones for sure.
Yeah, love it. Your dream guest writer for Doctor Who?
Jane Espenson, I would like to have write for Doctor Who.
I don't know Jane Espenson. What's Jane Espenson?
So Jane Espenson has actually already written in the world of Doctor Who because she wrote a few episodes of the much maligned Torchwood Miracle Day. But she is best known for having written and like co-exec produced Buffy alongside Joss Whedon. Like other than I only recently discovered Buffy, and obviously it's a weird time to discover Buffy with all the Joss Whedon controversy and everything. But other than the Whedon directed and written episodes, the Espenson written episodes are some of the best episodes of Buffy. They're so great, and I think her style would really lend itself to Doctor Who.
Yeah, great answer.
Even though her Torchwood stuff is like episodes weren't always brilliant, but that's kind of just the constraints of Miracle Day being a bit shit, I think. Rather than
I've not watched Miracle Day for ages. I need to rewatch it.
You don't,
or do I? No, I don't. This is such a great question. You have to round up 4 guests that you've had on Galactic Yo-Yo to orchestrate a heist with.
Yeah.
Who do you choose?
I started thinking about this one and then I stopped, so I don't really have an answer. But I did start thinking about it. So Tom Webster, my good friend Tom Webster, I would have in the heist because he is very good at doing impressions and regional accents, which I feel like would come in handy in a sort of if you're trying to sneak in somewhere or divert someone's attention or something. I would have Johnny Spandrel because I know that he is. I mean, he's an incredibly intelligent man, and I don't want to reveal too much about his private life because I know he uses an alter ego online. But I just know that he's done very well in his career and is a very clever man. So I think he would offer some great insight. Who else would I have? I would have, to complete the lineup, Sarah Garnham and Connor Johnston, my favourite duo, who would offer some wry wit to proceedings.
Wonderful.
Like Connor would keep the morale going, and Sarah would keep you grounded. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm now trying to think who I would bring.
I mean, you've got a
from
smaller
my
selection
Who
to
Knew
pick
guest.
from.
I will, yeah. And one of those options is Katy Manning. I mean, Katy's coming.
Is she? And I mean, no
Katy's
disrespect to
coming.
Katy Manning, but I would not enlist her to do any task.
Why?
I wouldn't trust her
Wonderful.
to keep her head in the
He's-
game.
Yeah, that is true. She moral support.
Sure.
Support.
Okay. Yeah.
She'd definitely be. She'd provide, and she'd make a fun heist.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happened, if we're succeeding or if we're all going down, Katy's going to make it fun. I'd have Billy. I trust Billy.
Mm-hmm.
Billy. I look at Billy and I think that's a man who
I think that's a man when I look at Billy
knows
as well.
his shit. Yeah, that's a man.
Yeah.
And Tom Vance, I know this is your question, but you know that I'm not going to pick you because you can't be trusted. You're a menace. You know, you've had more Twitter accounts than hot dinners, so I can't have you. Maybe I'll go Dalecian because
Okay.
I just can't. I can't understand the genius of that man. Peter is one of the most talented people ever, and I'm sure that he could put his mind to anything. Anyway, that wasn't my question. Sorry about that. I just hijacked that.
Let's have some more
Tom's
quick
last
fire
question.
questions. Yeah.
Yes, Tom's last question was, how do you like your eggs in the morning?
I like a poached egg.
A poached egg.
Mm.
Nice. I'm more of a fried.
Historically, I'd have been fried, but as I've lost my regional accent and moved to London, I've also become a poached egg lover. So make of that what you will.
Well, this is something that has come up, multiple times. The fact that we both run Doctor Who podcasts.
Mm.
Harry Draper, friend of the show, at Bowtie Animation, has said,
Yes.
does having the host of one Doctor Who podcast in another Doctor Who podcast mean that one podcast occupies precisely the same space and time as the atoms making up the other podcast, resulting in extinction and utter annihilation?
That's questions like that are really funny, are very difficult to answer and put a lot of pressure on the person being asked, because now I'm required to come up with a funny response to Harry's funny question. I'm afraid,
I'd
Harry,
just say yes.
I do not have one, so I'm going to go with yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll both remember this?
No, I don't. I don't think we will.
No.
No. It's going to be like a multi-doctor, interaction.
This is a multi-doctor. Is some other podcaster going to come in a minute and call us a dandy and a clown?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Who's the dandy? Who's the clown?
Yeah.
No, we're not doing that.
No.
Let's have another question. I'm loving it.
Yes, let's go. This is an interesting one because I'll be honest, it's an episode of the podcast that I've not listened to. It's an episode of Galactic Yoyo I've not listened to. But I did take a little look at.
Oh, I think I saw this question. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So Lee at Lee Hamill 12 said that he's just recently got into Molly's podcast and was listening to an old episode with Elizabeth Sandoffer.
That's right. Yeah, that is how you say it.
And I wanted to know, has Molly's view on Kill the Moon changed since Sandoffer posted her review?
So my conversation with Elizabeth Sandoffer about Kill the Moon definitely changed my view on Kill the Moon a little bit. But then my conversation with Peter Harness about Kill the Moon changed it even more, and I enjoy it a lot more than I ever did having had both those conversations. Is my answer to that.
Yes. Yeah, because I had a little look at her review, and I believe I saw that she posted a written review online, and I know that one line in it refers to it as the greatest episode of Doctor Who she's seen.
Right. So that was kind of her unpopular opinion for Galactic Yo-Yo, and I love you, Peter Harness. I still don't think it's the best Doctor Who episode ever, but it's definitely better than most people give it credit for. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, I really want to revisit it.
Yeah.
Because
like once you get over the moon
Davis, who
being
I
an
had on a
egg,
few weeks-
like it's great.
Yeah, well, I seem to just have forgotten about all of the good bits, because when I think about it properly, like I do remember the whole debate that's in it, but when I usually think back to it, the first thing I think is like that one with the they're on the moon and it's a bit boring. But yeah, I really need to revisit it because Sam Davis has told me to revisit it as well, because he also adores that episode.
It's a good story, and you should watch it again.
Yeah. I think maybe it's the next Love and Monsters. Maybe it's the next cult
for sure
Doctor Who episode.
Yeah. I think we're still, even though it was 6 years ago now, 7 years ago, I think we're still a bit
close.
too near. I think once we get a decade away from Kill the Moon, that's when it's going to become the new Love and Monsters.
Yes, definitely. At Oscar Groucho's.
Oh yeah, big fan of my podcast, I believe. I get a lot of tweets from Oscar Groucho. Yeah.
He's a good lad. He's very good and great artist.
Right. Okay.
Wonderful artist. How do you feel that Doctor Who as a show has developed alongside its audience in the last 15 plus years?
Right. So that's really interesting, because I did my university dissertation on sort of Doctor Who and its audience and its relationship with its various audiences, because I don't think that the audience of Doctor Who is one thing. I think Doctor Who maintains a number of distinct audiences, and its relationships with them are all different. But when I did that dissertation in 2016, so like we're 5 years on now from that, so I can't really draw any of the same conclusions. I think
and it's been a strange 5 years in the specifically 4 years in the fandom,
for sure.
Yeah,
I think that Doctor Who's in a place now where it doesn't really know what its audience is, which might sound harsh, but I don't. I think it's trying to cultivate the audience it had in the Russell T Davies era, but maybe those same audiences don't really exist anymore. Maybe those audiences are not as interested in watching Doctor Who as they used to be. I think Doctor Who's in a position now where it needs to work out what its audience is and what they want and what it's trying to give them. I realize I could be talking nonsense, because I think people like you and me find it difficult to determine what relationship Doctor Who has with its audience, because we are in a very specific sort of contingent of its audience, which is people who obsess over it. And I don't think we're in the best position to judge what your average man in the street thinks of it.
Agreed.
And the reality is that even when things are popular, right, when things are popular on a very wide scale, even if they're consumed very widely by Joe Blogs, that doesn't mean that Joe Blogs has a particular take on it. It just means that it's good enough and it's like well publicized enough that people enjoy it on a mass level, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think if you asked, even in the Russell T Davies era at the height of its power, if you asked the casual viewer about Doctor Who, I don't think they could wax lyrical about it for an hour. And I think that's why it's kind of difficult to have conversations about what does the audience think of Doctor Who. It's like they don't really doesn't really work like that. But that said, I think, I don't really know who Doctor Who thinks it's for at the moment. Yeah,
no, I agree with that. That makes sense. And another question from Oscar Groucho's. This is another great question. If you could describe your lockdown using only a Robert Holmes style title, what would it be? And as an example, his is the procrastination of terror.
Gosh. That's really, again, that's another question where somebody said something very funny, and now I feel under pressure to say something funny back. I'm gonna go with the back pain of doom.
That works.
Yeah, I think that's fine, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely works. I'm going to ask you a question.
Oh, okay, cool.
As we leave the Twitter section. Obviously, I've not listened to every episode of Galactic Yoyo. I don't know if this is something you've covered, but I'm going to turn the tables on you. What's your unpopular Doctor Who opinion?
So this is something I've covered. So in episode 50,
okay.
I got my dad to come on the podcast and host it, and he asked me about my unpopular opinions. And kind of looking back,
cool.
I really enjoyed recording that with him, but I kind of do think I did it too early, and I think I should have waited a little bit longer and left people. It's like, I don't know if you've heard the Off Menu podcast with Ed Gamble and James Acaster.
Yeah.
It's a really popular podcast where they ask different celebrity guests about their favorite meals. It's a great podcast, and people choose their best starter, the best main course, best dessert, and like drink and side order. And significantly, I think they're like more than 100 episodes in now, potentially. But we still don't know what James Acaster and Ed Gamble's off menu choices are, and I think that's a question that audiences are always going to have for them. And at some stage they will inevitably turn the tables, because they can't not, like, that's got to happen. But they haven't yet, and we're like 4 or 5 seasons into that podcast. So yeah, I think I did it too early. But my unpopular opinions then were about, I didn't like the ending for Amy and Rory, was one of them. And another one was that I phrased it as something like, stop being silly, everybody. Colin Baker is not good. So that is my unpopular opinion.
Oh wow.
It's a little bit harsh. But yeah.
Yeah. I love Colin. Because obviously I watched the era for the first time around Christmas. And I watched it all in order. Colin's first series is pretty damn good, I think.
I just can't agree with this Colin Baker apologism.
Well, the Trial of a Time Lord is...
I think Trial of a Time Lord is probably better than season 22.
Really?
In places. I think his best stories come from... I think The Mysterious Planet is probably his most passable story. Or maybe Vengeance on Varos from season 22.
What I was about to say, what about
Vengeance on Varos is decent. But like, I never enjoy myself watching a Colin Baker story. And significantly, I don't enjoy myself watching Colin Baker's performance.
Well, I'm
what's funny actually
for the first time.
Sorry to interrupt you. We talked about
the
option of having doctors on our podcast before, and I'm acutely aware that Colin Baker is the doctor who would be most likely to come on a podcast like mine. But I very much burn my bridges by consistently slating him across myriad episodes of Galactic Yoyo. But yeah, you're going to talk about how he's better on Big Finish. Yes, he's a little bit better on Big Finish, but
actually, I am listening to Big Finish at the minute, and I've always been told that he's better in Big Finish.
Yeah.
But because I like him in the show, I don't actually see that much of a change.
Okay.
I think he's actually the one doctor that I've listened to on Big Finish that hasn't actually improved.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's sort of just stayed to the same level.
Well, there's an unpopular opinion.
I'm hopping around doctors at the minute because, like I said, I'm new to Big Finish, and I listened to a lot of the 8 and Charlie stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All incredible. I loved it. Just more Paul McGann, please. And then I've listened to a couple of Peter Davison audios. I listened to Omega,
Spare
Lou
parts,
Garou.
surely.
I haven't listened to Spare Parts yet.
Oh.
No, I'm saving it.
Yeah, okay, good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Lou Garou, the weird Brazil werewolf story with Turlo.
Not heard of this.
It's great. I adore Peter Davison on audio. I think he's great. Sylvester was born to play the Doctor on audio.
Mm-hmm.
He's just,
that voice.
Yeah, but I just think
Colin Baker's a
just,
born audio performer though, because his his diction is so great. And
but I think he's great in his first series.
Fine.
Well.
I disagree with you, but
that's
the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it is.
But yeah, in answer to your question, that is my unpopular opinion.
That's your unpopular opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because the idea of having someone else host Who Knew with me as the guest is something I've thought about as a funny idea one day.
I think you save it though. I don't think you can do it too early.
I will save it.
Yeah. I think you do it for a milestone like I did, where it's episode 50 or it's episode 100.
I just worry that no one does anyone care.
Well, that's it though. That's why you wait, because you wait until people care. You know, I for my 100th episode, I put out this really self-indulgent audio drama that I'd written, where I played myself and my friends played themselves, and it was really indulgent and ridiculous. But I felt able to do that because I'd built an audience across 100 episodes. So I kind of felt like, well, people can put up with half an hour of me kind of, loving myself a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's why you don't do that stuff too early, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have technically put an episode and a person in the corridor and the DVD collection.
You did that in the Katy Manning episode, right?
I did it in the Katy Manning episode, yeah. But while Katy probably might have been my first choice, the DVD collection choice was more a tribute to Katy. I probably wouldn't have picked it.
You were buttering her up.
What?
You were being disingenuous to receive brownie points from Katy Manning.
Not that at all. I wanted, because it's an episode that I loved, and I wanted an episode to go in there. But I won't reveal it. That I think I know what I'd put in there.
Okay.
But I won't reveal it. I'll leave you.
You'd have to take your existing pick out though, wouldn't you?
No, I can have two.
Okay.
I make the rules. Well, we've got a couple of people who've got two. Tom Vance has got two. Billy's got two. They've appeared twice.
Billy Big Boys, two DVD collection picks. Blimey.
Yeah, two picks. So I'll join them. I'll join
I think
my
that's
co-hosts.
legitimate. Yeah.
Cool. We've got one last question.
Great.
But it's not a question from Twitter.
Oh, okay.
It's a relatively new semi-regular.
Oh, it's a feature.
Feature. This is a feature.
Okay.
We have more. So many features.
Fine.
It's I just live for a feature. This feature is called Gestion Time.
What's a balhoon? Balacaf or what? Balacaf. Who cares how many 9-1 I've seen? I don't know what this thing is that I'm seeing. Nah, don't get it.
This is a question from your partner, Jess.
This is, yes. So, my girlfriend hates sci-fi.
Right.
And she hates well, she doesn't hate Doctor Who. She likes some of Doctor Who.
Right. Have you made her
Um,
hate Doctor Who more though? Because that's what's happened with
Half and
me.
half.
Right.
There's some episodes that she absolutely loves,
Yeah.
and there's some episodes that she despises,
Mm.
and there's no in between. And it's a really random select, like
This is
Tooth
it.
and
Non-fans
Claw.
are weird. They pick weird episodes
Yeah.
and they like weird stuff. This
So
is what I
her
mean.
two favorites that she's seen. She loves like Midnight and Empty Child, and
Taste,
she's got some great ones. But her two favorites that she always brings up are Tooth and Claw and
Wild.
the Unquiet Dead.
Quite random.
So I get Jess to ask one of her hilarious questions, with no context. I just go, ask me a question that you something you've always wondered about Doctor Who.
Okay, right.
And this week she's asked two questions. The first one being, does the TARDIS have to have an MOT?
Right. I think the TARDIS does. I think there is some kind of Gallifreyan equivalent of an MOT. It's exactly the kind of bureaucracy that the Time Lords would
Yeah.
advocate. I don't think the TARDIS would pass its MOT
Me neither.
under any circumstances. But I think that's what's so great. The Doctor's your weird aunt or uncle who drives without a license and doesn't have an MOT, and their tax discs expired and all that. That's my answer.
Yeah. Agreed. She also asked, are there TARDIS mechanics? Which I would say, yeah, there probably are.
I think we've sort of seen them, haven't we?
I think we've seen a few.
In the name of the Doctor at the start when we see the TARDIS get stolen. I think are those guys sort of equivalent of mechanics?
I would imagine so.
Yeah. That's the impression I get anyway.
I think there's one in a Big Finish audio.
I mean,
I feel like
there's
I
everything
listened to a review.
in a Big Finish audio. I said this on my podcast a few weeks ago, but it's like if you can imagine it, there's porn of it. If you can imagine it, there's Big Finish of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. So there you go, Jess. You asked your question.
Feed that
back. The TARDIS does have to have an MOT, but it probably hasn't had one for a while, and it would fail if it needed to have one.
And there are TARDIS mechanics.
Yes, there are. So that was Gestion Time.
Gestion Time, great.
I still don't get it.
And we go from feature to feature to feature to feature.
Great.
Because I don't know how to structure a podcast.
No, that's fine.
So let's go straight to everyone's favourite corridor.
We're doing Corridor of Fame now.
We're going to do the Corridor of Fame.
Have you ever been limited by who you were before?
One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
Our lives are different to anybody else's. That's the exciting thing.
Dear? Sarah Jane?
Do I have the right?
For some people, small, beautiful events is what life is all about.
In the nursery compared to us, 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really
Every great decision creates ripples, like a huge boulder dropped in a lake.
But it was a childish dream that made you a doctor. You dreamt you could no more.
I'm not just the time. I'm the last of the time.
It just disappears, doesn't it? Everything you are gone in a moment, like breath on a mirror.
I do what I do because it's right! Because it's decent! And above all, it's kind!
Love abides in the face of everything.
Is this our last feature?
It is our last feature.
Okay.
This is how we wind down. I always imagine like the corridor to be like wood panelled walls, and
I'm imagining, when you go to I don't know if you've ever had to go to a wedding reception or a wake, and it's at a local golf club or cricket club, or maybe you're an avid golf or cricket player, and the walls are lined with pictures of the chair people of the golf or cricket club.
Exactly how
That's
I
what I'm
imagine
imagining.
it.
Yeah.
Molly, would you like to enter the corridor of fame?
Right.
You've had a bit of trouble. It
I've
seems
had
like
some
you've had a bit of
trouble
trouble
with this. So I, as I said earlier, I knew instantly what my DVD collection was going to be as soon as you asked me, and I saw it wasn't already in the list. I knew I was going to opt for Love and Monsters. Corridor of Fame was a little more difficult because there are people that are like obvious picks, and I was like, I don't want to be that person who picks someone super obvious, but also like I don't want to be too much of a hipster either. Like I was like, the decision became very much a decision of self-image, right? But the big names that I was considering were Stephen Moffat, who I've already mentioned as my favorite Doctor Who writer, and Murray Gold.
Yeah.
And then I dismissed the two of them on account of them being too big and too influential. Because I thought,
a lot of people say this.
These podcasts are going to keep happening, and sooner or later, both of those people are definitely going to get picked.
Yeah,
right. At some stage.
I mean, I do have a slight concern that everyone's going to think this, and they'll never
right.
get in.
Yeah, and then they'll never get in. But you could start putting people in on an honorary basis, couldn't you? If you have enough conversations like this, then you could, as the arbiter of the Corridor of Fame, put in people like.
Yeah, I make all the rules. I can do what I like here.
So I don't want to be the person, as much as I think they're deserving of their place in the Corridor of Fame, I don't want to be the person to put either of those people in. So I'm not going for those two. I then considered opting for Gordon Tipple, who is, for those listeners who don't know, and you probably all do if you're listening to this, he is the man who portrays the Master for about 12 seconds at the start of the TV movie. And I was going to put him in as a sort of symbolic reference to Doctor Who fandom and how we're all like pernickety pedants. And
Oscar Groucho's, who's asked a couple of questions, is obsessed with Gordon Tipple. So
he and I both, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be incredibly excited at that mention. I just thought I'd give Oscar a shout out there.
Great, yeah. So I did think about Gordon Tipple, and then I dismissed that because I thought I don't want to be a complete troll. And then I thought, who has actually had an effect on my Doctor Who world, but might not have had an effect on everybody's Doctor Who world? And I landed on somebody we've actually talked about on this podcast already, Elizabeth Sandoffer. And it was weird talking about her earlier because I'm thinking, I don't want to reveal that I'm picking her yet, but yeah, I'm picking her. So for those of you who don't know who she is a writer and critic and essayist who wrote a thing called the Tardis Eruditorum, which was a blog and is now a series of books. Which kind of where there's essays on every Doctor Who story, and then there are essays on other things that were happening at the same time as Doctor Who, so other TV series, movies, cultural stuff, and she talks about those things in relation to Doctor Who. Then she also does essays about books and audio dramas of Doctor Who and all that kind of spin-off stuff, and Torchwood and Sarah Jane. It's an incredibly comprehensive piece of work. It's like over 1 million words, and it is extraordinary. I've discovered it when I was at university, and it changed the way I thought about not only Doctor Who, but media and art in general and storytelling. I sort of see everything now through a semi-Sandofferian lens. And I just, it completely rocked my world when I discovered that blog. And I don't always agree with everything on the Tardis Eruditorum. And I don't always understand everything about it either, but it's always surprising. And one way in which I think it really influenced me is that something she did a lot on that blog was redemptive readings, whereby she would, if a story was had a bad reputation, she would she would try and aim for the most redemptive, i.e., the best reading possible of that story, and try and dig into what was good about it. Also, significantly, it wasn't a review. It was never a review blog, so it was never really. I mean, it became this at times, but it was never really about her being like, "Is this story any good?" It was more like, "What is this story telling us about culture, and what is it telling us about Doctor Who?"
Which
and what
is
it
so
telling
much
us
more
about the story?
interesting to me.
It was way more interesting. And it sort of turned me off to the kind of review content that I was consuming before that. I find less interesting now. I find it more interesting to see a very specific kind of essay that goes down a particular route and says, okay, let's dig into what this thing is doing and what that thing is doing. So yeah, I'm putting her in the Corridor of Fame, even though she's, I hope she wouldn't mind me saying this, obviously a lesser known face than many of the other people in the Corridor of Fame, but I think she's, like I say, she shaped my understanding of Doctor Who in a big way, and I think I'm not alone there. There's a bunch of other people online who I think would say the same thing. And
no, it's really cool.
Politically, she's great, and I love it.
Yeah, well, when I sort of with guests, as you know, I sort of like pitch the concept of the corridor and like, try and I always try and make it clear that anyone can go in the corridor.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be an actor who's been in the show. It doesn't have to be a writer. It doesn't have to be a director. And that is a perfect example. And it's the kind of pick that we haven't really had yet. I'd say the closest, we've had a couple of ones that are lesser known people, like Billy put Mike Tucker in, who did all the model work, and
has written some great Doctor Who novels as well, I believe.
Yeah, great novels. Yeah, and then Davis. I say not really known, but Scott Gray is not particularly involved with the show, but he's so involved with the comics. Yeah. That's a great pick, and it's cool to get, because I think at some point, I imagine people that have been on the podcast before, like yourself or Ace Creeper, or those people are going to come in at some point, and this is sort of the first of those online personalities.
Sure.
And someone more from the fandom than from the show, which is cool. It's really, really cool.
Nice. I'm glad I picked her. You've affirmed me in my choice.
Yes, it's a great pick. And we're gonna wind down now. It's been an absolute pleasure, but I have one final question.
Okay, great.
Yeah, one final.
I'm gonna give this all I've got. This last question.
Oh, you good, because what a question it is.
Okay, let's hear it.
Question is, in a sentence. It doesn't have to be a sentence.
Sorry,
I say this every week.
What the listeners don't know is I just pulled a face.
Yeah, a true grimace.
I really struggle with in a sentence questions.
Well, everybody always does. So I don't think anyone has ever answered this.
They're not as bad as in one word questions, which I simply refuse to answer because the answers are always boring.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. In one syllable.
Right.
Please. Not really. What does Doctor Who mean to you?
Wow. Okay. I'm not going to be able to answer this in one sentence because I don't want to be the kind of person who... I don't want to overstate Doctor Who's importance. Like, I worry about doing that. Like, obviously, it's changed my life, but I don't want to be the person who's like, Doctor Who is my world. And, like, I wouldn't be the person I am today without Doctor Who. And I find that a little much. That said, Doctor Who has made me proud to be different, is what I would say. That is my sentence.
That's a great sentence.
Yeah.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
What can I say? I actually did better there than I thought I would.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great answer. I've never been disappointed with an answer to that question. I feel like you could ask anyone who loves Doctor Who that question.
Yeah, I was
going to
say you couldn't ask anyone because most people would say fuck all.
Yeah, most people will go, "Oh, I haven't watched this. It's David Tennant left."
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, start watching around then.
Yeah.
Well, that's what most people would say.
Yeah, they would.
But that is a cracking answer, and you have been a cracking guest. Thank you so much for coming on.
My
Please plug away. Plug your things.
Well, okay, so you can follow me on Twitter at Molly_Martian. I tweet banal nonsense there. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Galactic Yoyo Pod, and listen to it on everything SoundCloud, not Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify. It's on most things. Have I got other things to plug? That's everything podcast wise. Yeah, that's it really.
Well,
I do other creative stuff, but you can see that on my Twitter. I'm not gonna bore you. I'm not gonna bore you with that. But
yeah, Twitter leads to all roads. So yeah, I'm sure you could find everything there.
And please, if you're hearing about Galactic Yoyo through me for the first time here, heed my advice from earlier, and do not listen from episode 1 as much as you feel compelled to. Please, like listen to some of the recent ones, and then only when you've run out of recent ones, go back and experience the first few.
I would like to amend that statement and say, listen to any of Galactic Yoyo because it's all ruddy great. It's all brilliant.
That's kind.
Obviously, this podcast, I can't say the podcast because now it's not that clear because we're talking about 2 podcasts at the same time. You can follow us on Twitter at whoknewdwpod. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Ryan Carr. We're on Instagram as well. I'm everywhere. I'm like shit on your shoe. And we're now on YouTube. Please go over, subscribe to whoknewdwpod. You can find the links on Twitter, and you'll find there just before this episode, you'll find our new spin-off podcast, The Collector's Edition. It's me, Tom Vance, Billy Garrett John, and guest host Ace Creeper. We just chat some shit. We talk about season openers. We talk about Doctor Who news. And it's an hour 45 of chaos. And it's very dear to my heart. So it would mean a lot if everybody checks it out. But thank you, Molly, once again, for being a wonderful guest.
No problem at all. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Who Knew, a Doctor Who podcast. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts and now on YouTube. Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you can, as it really helps us out. And a massive thanks to the Sononauts for lending their cover of the Doctor Who theme to be the theme for the podcast.